What is up, everybody? Welcome to another weekend roundup. What a weekend it was, both in the Premier League and the Bundesliga. Going to get to all of that in a second. But first, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. Manchester City beat Arsenal. It feels like the Premier League title race has flipped. And then this weekend happens. It looks like Manchester City might go in full control of this title race as Arsenal are, going behind Aston Villa, fighting back. Looks like they're going to have to settle for a draw, which would be another really crushing blow from a mental standpoint. Not to mention that your margin of error is gone after, City closed the gap and took the lead in the table, even though you have this game in hand. But Jorginho unleashes a shot. It bounces around off of Emi Martinez and into the net in stoppage time. So the longtime Chelsea player scores, well, has the shot that then deflects off of the former Arsenal goalkeeper to give Arsenal a win against Arsenal's former manager, Unai Emery. Gabriel Martinelli then adds a fourth goal a couple minutes later off of a last second, corner kick. Emi Martinez is coming up and Arsenal catch him out to get the insurance goal and seal the win. This game felt massive even before what happened to Manchester City, and I'll get to that next. The bleeding had to stop for Arsenal. Arsenal could not afford to fall behind in this title race. Manchester City essentially caught up, right? But you still had that game in hand. It was still in your control. And that was something to hold on to. Even if it felt like the momentum was quickly dissipating and that Manchester City were the favorites at that point, which they probably were. To then go draw another game, to drop more points, and to go another game without getting back into the win, the win column, would have been devastating. They played pretty well. You can't take the moral victories, and I'm somebody who really likes to put emphasis on the performance. We're to the point in the season, the way things were going for Arsenal, you can't do any of that in this game. They simply had to win. And credit to them, they found a way. They looked more like themselves. This looks like the Arsenal I have been so adamant in believing in all season long and so convinced that this is for real. Whether that ends up in a title or not, we'll see. But I didn't expect them to just disappear and kind of collapse down the stretch, and they were in danger of doing that. But they get this win, even if regardless of what happened to Manchester City, it was a massive, massive confidence boost for Arsenal. You felt like this game got them back on track. And then Manchester City go and drop points against Nottingham Forest. I pointed out that right there's this stretch of games here, and I believe it's Bournemouth next, where you're playing these newly promoted teams that these can be really difficult games. They're also games you should win, but it's just an interesting way to kind of come out of beating Arsenal at the Emirates. And look, it's not that City played poorly. City 100% deserved to win this game, but they don't get the second goal, and up pops Chris Wood. These things happen sometimes. What has happened to City this season is that you have compounded these kind of games where, as much control as they have, the ball just won't go in the net, or they give up a fluky goal or whatever, with some just outright bad performances where they didn't deserve the points. You're not going to get all the points you deserve anyway. And City uncharacteristically have also been giving points away this season. And so then you have these games where, like I said, things happen sometimes, right? This sport is inherently unfair because one goal means everything. And ask Chelsea about, moral victories, about expected goals, and how that's going. If you don't finish your chances, There's always the possibility something like this happens. Which gets me to the point I really want to make here, which is I feel like it was easy to fall into this narrative coming out of the game at the Emirates where, oh, here come Manchester City. You can't let them catch you. They're just going to steamroll the rest of the way. Arsenal are clinging, holding on for dear life at this point in the title race. Maybe I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but it's based on City's history, and we have got to stop basing everything on City's history. This Manchester City team in 2022-23 has not won more than 4 consecutive Premier League games. I will say that again. Longest Premier League winning streak, 4 games. That is the team that Arsenal is going up against. Now, is it entirely possible Manchester City reel off 10 straight wins? Sure. It's always possible with this team. But there is no reason to go assume that is going to happen just because they made up this ground against Arsenal and Arsenal stumbled for a little while there. Something like this Nottingham Forest draw was always a possibility based on City's history this season. You have to divide City season by season because we like to throw this all in together, and it's understandable because of the amount of trophies they won and how good they've been. But all City teams are not created equal from a talent perspective and, more importantly, from a performance perspective. Even if this team wins the title, this has not been a great season compared to the other ones. They have not looked invincible for 2-3 months in a row where they win literally every single game they play. That's not who this team has been. Could it change? Sure. Will it change? I'm not betting on it. Especially after this weekend, I really think this is 50-50 and Arsenal is right there. I really do. And then we get to the Bundesliga. And then I'm going to end with one final thought kind of connecting them. Dayot Upamecano gets a red card. Bayern Munich once again lose to Borussia Mönchengladbach. Union Berlin then go and have a really bad draw against Schalke. 2 drop points you simply can't afford. Dortmund go do their thing, and they get a win, and the end result is that all 3 teams are now tied at the top of the table in points. The point I want to make here is what the schedule looks like moving forward. And, of course, anybody, if you tell them, 20 plus games into the season, you're level on points with Bayern, you'll take it, no questions asked, every single time. Bayern haven't lost at home. Union Berlin, Borussia Dortmund still both have to go to Bayern. Things like draws against Schalke could very well decide this title race, even as Bayern has continued to stumble. This is a terrific title race because obviously it's right up for grabs. All these teams are level on points. There's still another step that needs to be taken, though. It's one thing to stay in a title race. It's another thing to actually go on and win the league. I don't see how somebody does this without getting points at Bayern. Now, it's entirely possible, and the other part of this is you're giving yourself the opportunity, right? If somebody wins that one game, it changes everything because you are now in control of the league. Until that happens, though, you just can't afford to drop points because you're trying to do something that hasn't been done this season by beating Bayern at home. And so hopefully we're setting up for a great finish. I mean, this is as good as the Bundesliga has been in who knows how long. And Bayern have done their part by being vulnerable and inconsistent. There's still another step that needs to be taken, though. You can't just hang with them because they're going to win the goal difference battle. And they are still level on points with Dortmund and Union Berlin, having gone already to both of those teams' stadiums. And by the way, taken points away from both of them with draws. You got to be able to do the same on the reverse. And we're going to start, that starts with next weekend, that game against Union Berlin. Union Berlin's got an opportunity here to go cause some chaos by at least getting a point and lowering Bayern's maximum point total in that game. We'll see if they can do it. But it's a different story heading into that game if they didn't drop these 2 points against the worst team in the league. Maybe you absolutely take the position every single time, like I said. There's just still a lot of work to be done for me to consider somebody other than Bayern the odds-on favorite to win the league. That's all I'm saying. But what we have seen in both of these title races is, and specifically this week, to separate yourself, you have to not only get the big win or the big result or get that break, you then have to go take the next step and actually capitalize on it. Right? Arsenal, phenomenal first half against Manchester City. Looks like they could be in complete control of the league. Fall apart in the second half. All of a sudden, City is everybody's pick to win the league. City then failed to capitalize on that by drawing against Nottingham Forest, while Arsenal, it looks like we're headed for another really crushing draw, find a way to pull out the win, then watch Manchester City drop points, and now it's a different story again. And we're kind of back to square one, where Arsenal have a slight edge, not enough to make you feel comfortable at all, but an edge. And then, you going back and forth in the Bundesliga. Bayern lose, Dortmund win, and Union Berlin has an opportunity to go top of the table and draws against Schalke. These two races are going to be decided by who can kind of win 2 rounds in a row, if you will. Because we haven't had the decisive moment yet in either of these. And that's what I'm waiting for at this point. It could come. I think it's going to come in those head-to-head meetings in the Bundesliga. Premier League, who knows? It could come in the head-to-head meeting. It also might not. But we are still waiting for kind of the moment we're going to look back on and say, that's kind of where the title got decided. That's when everything changed. It could have been this week, particularly in the Premier League. If somebody could have, if Arsenal could have won both those games and had City drop another 4 points, or even if they just had won both games, even if City went and beat Forest, if City could have beaten Forest after they beat Arsenal, but neither of them were able to capitalize on both, so they kind of ended up back at square one. These title races are fantastic. They are right there up for grabs. Who is going to kind of win the next battle, if you will, take the, sort of the next step, assume a little bit of control, and then follow it up with asserting that control even further and really grabbing control of these title races. Because otherwise, they're probably going down to the last game of the season, which would be great entertainment and obviously incredibly stressful for everyone involved. But we're in the entertainment business. This has been phenomenal in both leagues so far. The Bundesliga title race is just captivating because we haven't had one like this. And obviously, the Premier League delivers pretty much every season in some way, but is certainly delivering this season. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.